Welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord and Jake Gordon. The Vaughn Grissom and Brandon Shoemake decisions to option them to Gwinnett wasn't the only moves of the offseason. We also had several other guys get optioned to Gwinnett, most notably Nick Anderson, a guy who I thought had a very good chance of making the opening day roster. Now, I still really like Anderson. I think he could end up being a setup man for this team somewhere down the line, but he had options. He was on a non guaranteed contract. So stashing him in Gwinnett makes a lot of sense. I'm not really shocked by that. They also optioned Jordan Luplow and Eli White, two outfielders that were competing for roster spots. Which one of these three options surprises you most?
Alex, you go ahead and go first.
I'll go with somebody who wasn't optioned in Pilar. I mean, he's been terrible this spring, and he could have been stashed in Gwinnett. The Braves are just valuing his veteran presence, I guess, and that locker room presence, because everyone you just mentioned, besides Jordan Luplow, he's been dealing with that oblique injury, but he just came back. Eli White's been outperforming Pilar in every facet of the game. Obviously, his track record is not nearly as good as Pilar's offensively. So that is obviously why Pilar's up there. And I guess that veteran leadership I mentioned earlier. It's just crazy. You know, they could say the best 26 make it, but that's rarely the case.
Yeah, I will say I think Nick Anderson's the most surprising for me. Chase, you wrote about it. You said you thought he was a roster lock. I thought he was a roster lock. He was fantastic. 2 or 3 years ago, he was one of the best relievers in all of baseball. And yeah, I thought he was going to make it. I thought he would be a big piece of this bullpen. And we see, Jackson Stevens went down as well. And the bullpen's going to be interesting. I'm not really sure how it's going to shake out. We don't really know how the rotation's going to shake out, but I thought Anderson was going to make it for sure.
Yeah, I'm not too surprised about Eli White. I thought he was always going to begin the year in Gwinnett. He's just more of a defensive replacement. Now, if he keeps tearing the cover off the ball in Gwinnett, he will earn a quick call back to Atlanta. Luplo, I think, will be on this team sooner rather than later. I'm not totally shocked by Pilar. Yeah, he's been bad in spring training, but that doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And they're just going with his veteran leadership, defensive ability, and he's the best offensive option of the bunch outside of maybe Jordan Luplo. I knew Sam Hilliard was going to make it. He has no options. He's been really good this spring. But I thought Luplo or Pilar was going to be the final spot. So not totally surprised. I thought Nick Anderson was starting to write his name in pen rather than paper onto the roster. Jesse Chavez is on a minor league deal. It looks like he's going to get the spot over him, which I like Jesse Chavez. He's been great for the Braves over the last couple of seasons, but at the same time, I wouldn't have been shocked if he started the year in the minors. Really, you're splitting hairs there. It doesn't really bother me because I do think Anderson can season up in Gwinnett, get some more confidence, and come onto this team and be a huge piece of the team. I'm expecting that. He struck out like 18 batters per nine this spring. Like, it's something ridiculous. He's averaging like 2 strikeouts every appearance. He has given up a few runs, but his stuff's clearly still dominant, and I think he could be a huge piece of this team. So that was definitely the most surprising omission. But this roster is pretty much locked up. I mean, if you look at it position player wise, you have Adrianza and Arcia at the shortstop position. They've won this job. We don't know why, but they have. You look at the outfield, the backups are going to be Hilliard, Rosario, Azuna. A couple of those guys will have to start along with Pilar. You look at the rotation, that's really the only thing up for grabs. And the only decision they have to make is, does Kyle Wright start the year on the IL, which I think he will. I think he'll start the year on the 10-day IL, which means Schuster and Dodd make it, which they've both earned it this spring. But I see this as pretty much a set roster. I don't see any other moves. Those are the 26 guys for me. Obviously, I didn't name the obvious candidates, but those are the 26 guys for me.
Yeah, I don't think. I think the big surprise was at shortstop, but everything else, I don't think it's too out of bounds.
Well, the starting rotation is equally surprising, and I know you didn't mean that, but I think it's already a foregone conclusion. Kyle Wright is not going to begin the year in the starting rotation. Like, I think I saw something recently after his last outing where he didn't do that well, but he came away healthy, and that's all they were trying to do. And he said himself that he won't begin the year, and that he's aiming for that second series.
Yeah, I don't even think it'll be the second series. I mean, he only threw 24 pitches. Like, he'll probably throw 40 to 50 in a week. and in a week is basically when the season starts. They won't probably pitch him in the majors until he's at least 90, thrown like high 80s, 90 pitches, 85 pitches in the minors. So let's look at the timeline. That first series, he's probably throwing 60 pitches, maybe 70. And then he'll probably have another start after that in Gwinnett. And then I think, they'll start looking at putting him back on the major league roster. So I think we're looking at the middle of April for Kyle Wright. We get to see Soroka for the first time on Wednesday. Really excited for that. But like Wright, no way he's going to be ready. And they wouldn't rush him to the majors like that. Anyways, I think for him, they're going to stretch him out. He might spend a few months in Gwinnett before we see him. But yeah, the depth of this rotation is so impressive that guys like Schuster and Dodd have done enough to earn a job. And I feel confident in them. I really do. Like, I don't feel like the Braves are going to miss a ton with those two like I do with Orlando Arcia starting at shortstop.
Yeah, the Gwinnett Stripers could probably make the playoffs in the right division. I mean, they're loaded with major league talent.
Which is another crazy thing to say because, Jake, I remember we were talking earlier in the offseason about how the Stripers need a bunch of major league, some depth pieces, right? We wrote a lot of articles about how some depth pieces they could sign. They signed a lot of them to fill the left field void. But then you look, now you have Vaughn Grissom and Shoemake down there. You got Bryce Elder, Ian Anderson, Colby Allard, Kyle Wright, the whole, Nick Anderson, you look at that team, that's a major league roster. That is I'll even go ahead and say it. That team is better than the Oakland Athletics. They are better than the Oakland Athletics. No lie. I don't think that's a lie. I don't think that's crazy to say.
No, that team wins the NL Central.
I respect the Cardinals a little bit, but I really do think that team is probably better than the Oakland Athletics. So a lot of depth. That's a good thing. We'll see a lot of these guys, I think, early on and throughout the season.